And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing. Yes.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the
This gentleman right here. Huh? What happened? No, this the gentleman right here with the camera in his hand. Wave your hand. Pastor.
James Wesley Carr.
Yeah, James Wesley Carr. No. What's your name?
Oh, Kelly Richardson.
Kelly Richardson.
Pastor Kelly Richardson.
He is a great grand nephew.
Yeah.
Nephew of one of our first pastors. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's his uncle right here in the corner of the actual stained glass window here to your left.
He got the eyes.
He looked just like him. Got the same eyes anyway. Come on, guys. Come on.
That's funny.
Don't stand up there looking like. Look on the outside edge of the pews. Look on the outside edge of the pews where you are. You see the different markings alongside the edge of the pews? They represent the different tribes that made up our congregation back then and spoke over 6 different languages among themselves. These were small tribes enslaved by larger tribes and sold to Europeans as they came along the African coast. One of the major languages they spoke back then was that of Aramaic and also too of Hebrew, which means the writings read from bottom to top. Assalamu alaikum. Which means peace be unto you. It's not a Muslim term. It's actually the same greeting which Christ gave into the disciples when he met them in that region. Most countries in that region read from right to left. Here in America, we read from left to right. That's why the pastors in the stained glass window up front here are going in numbers 2 through 7 from the right-hand side over to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left.
This is First African Baptist Church, the oldest black church in North America. The building, built by slaves. The gentleman that laid the first brick laid the last. The balcony hold pews that actually were built by slaves. They have the oldest information in this building. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing.
I'm so glad you're here because you can bring great clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered? Because they went west.
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
I'm one of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots are there. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now.
Now I can't figure it out. If y'all are the chosen ones, shouldn't y'all be obeying better than me? I mean, I even try to keep the fourth commandment. Try to keep the Sabbath day holy. I've spent many of hours trying to figure out which is the right Sabbath day, because we know that old Catholic Church, something a little fishy about them, don't we? With that white Jesus. I mean, here's a white guy telling you black people that your Messiah is not a long-haired white European guy. Your Messiah is Hebrew, my darker-skinned brothers and sisters. When are you guys going to wake up and become kings and queens?
Okay, I was just thinking about this morning. I grew up Baptist. I went to Vacation Bible School. I've read the Bible. I don't know if I'm interpreting it correctly, but if we are made in God's image, right, and the first modern humans originated in Africa, if God has a human form, God is black. God is black.
I was a Christian missionary for years, but there came a time in my life when I realized that what I was taught about the Bible was a lie. In my confusion, I cried out for help. I met an Israelite who introduced me to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, who is described in the Bible as having hair white as wool and eyes red as fire. Yes, the God in the Bible is black.
God's people, the Most High has chosen, the Hebrews, the blacks in America, okay? We're about to see some power. Come on, y'all. You got to get out of this lie, okay? You got to get out of this lie. You have got to come out of this lie. This white Jesus that you are worshiping is going to take you to hell. Please wake up. Oh, in the name of Yahushua, wake up. Oh, I feel the Holy Ghost. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yahushua is an alpha, strong, black man. He is a Negro. He is a Hebrew. I don't know what word you need to hear to understand who they are, but it is not me. I am not a chosen. You can get mad. It doesn't matter. This is how the Most High has done it. I am a Gentile, and I know my place. But I'm called to tell all of these Gentile whites that I know that you are in the deepest deception that you have ever been in, and you have been in it your whole life. And the awakening is happening now. People are waking up.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israel, that's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time, all that he said,
I know. We don't have
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews? Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews? Do you want to?
You know, it's going to be the first woman president, and that's incredibly exciting. And, you know, she's Indian, she's black, she's everything. You can be more than one thing. It's incredible. You know, I'm Jewish and Irish. I wish I was black. Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black. Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black.
Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
With the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't matter.
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
I want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Hope and pray all is well with you guys. Before we move forward with this lesson, before we go on with this lesson, just want to do a check here. Been doing some upgrades to my equipment here. Next is going to be this microphone, but want to make sure that my mic sounds good. Excuse me. Want to make sure that my mic sounds good. All right. If the audio sounds okay to you, just type 1 inside the comment section. Let me make sure my mic settings are correct. Let me just check real quick. All right. Looks good on this end. Let's change this quality. There we go. Yeah, it looks good on this end. Let me do something here. All right. All right. Let's look at the comment section. All righty. So far, everyone says that the mic looked good. Okay. All right. Have a lot to cover tonight. And you guys probably remember I did a lesson on Shakespeare, over the past year, did a couple lessons actually about Shakespeare. And I want to build on that. I want to take it a step further. Want to introduce you guys to someone that, if you guys not familiar with, her name is Amelia Bassano. Amelia Bassano, known as Shakespeare's Dark Lady. So I want to, do a deeper, or should I say a deep discovery on her. Not sure if you guys are familiar with her, but I want to deal with her ethnicity. And as you can see, you see that she looks like you and I. She's also believed to contributed to or wrote some of Shakespeare's works. And so we got a lot to cover. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. I know it's kind of late. And before we get started, I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't, click like, subscribe to the channel. And if you believe that you are subscribed to the channel, if you clicked on that button to subscribe, double check to make sure that you are still subscribed, because YouTube has a tendency of unsubscribing subscribers for the sake of suppressing this channel. So I encourage you guys, double check to make sure that you are still subscribed to the channel. If this is your first time tuning into We Woke Now, click the like, subscribe to the channel. Also click on the notification button, periodically check on those things, because again, YouTube has a tendency of unchecking the notifications and unsubscribing our subscribers. All right, so we have a lot to unpack. So let me stretch this out here. Let's go ahead and get into it. So again, we are dealing with Shakespeare's Negro Israelite, Amelia Bassano. Let me take this banner off the screen. Okay, let me do one other thing before I forget, because I get asked a lot about the Cash App. So I'll go ahead and post the Cash App here. Let's see here. Bear with me 1 second. All right. All right. Give me 1 second. We'll get started here in a second. All right. Let's see. You're waiting for the chat to come up. I keep forgetting. Sometimes I forget to post this. And I want to thank you guys. I can't remember the person that brought it to my attention about YouTube saturating the videos with advertisements. You know, in order to be monetized, well, not monetized, have the super chats and all that. We have to, your channel has to be monetized, right? And so, with that being said, YouTube, when I went and checked out the video, the live I did last night, I mean, literally, they had advertisements scheduled for almost every 2 minutes, literally. And I think that could be a way of suppressing the video as well. But what I did was I didn't know that you were able to. I got clarity from the YouTube support, and I'm able to minimize those advertisements. So I went back over, and I'm going to go back over some of the videos and do the same. All right. So let me go ahead and post this Cash App information here. All right. Let's see here. There we go. All right. There we go. All righty. Hope and pray that you guys had a great Shabbat. We had a great Shabbat. Covered a lot earlier today, and we're going to continue to keep this momentum going. Again, tonight, our topic tonight is Shakespeare's Negro Israelite. In other words, dark lady. But I want to specifically say Negro Israelite, and I'm saying that for a reason. And when we get to that area of the lesson, you'll see why. Amelia Bassano. All right, let's go to get it in. Let's go and get it in. Let me adjust my mouse. All right. Let's start with this question here. Who was Shakespeare's dark lady? What did Shakespeare, in other words, Shakespeare's contemporaries and historians of their time, what did they say about the Israelites? How did they describe the Israelites of that time? Now, you guys already know I don't like to use the word Jew because that word is a word of confusion. That word is a word that is used to create an identity, part of the process of creating social constructs to further push the agenda of hijacking an identity that did not belong to them. So I don't use the word Jew because of that reason, and knowing that that word is not an ancient word. It's a language that evolved in the English language. GYU, 12th century, the Wycliffe Bible. It created, they made it up. And then by the time we get to the 17th century with the letter J, it went from GYU to JEW. But I want to make it clear, there's no abbreviation in Hebrew for Judah, or in the ancient Hebrew, it would be pronounced Yahwadah. There's no abbreviations for that, right? There is not an abbreviation for that. If you say the abbreviation for Judah is Yahwadah is Yah, well, that's the name of the Father's name. That's the short form of his name. You can't say Hawadah, because Hawadah means thank you. It means praise. So that's why I say Israelites. But there's a reason why I say it here. Place Israelites. So again, what does Shakespeare, his contemporaries, and historians of their time say about the Israelites? How did they describe them? What caused the shift? So let's start with this source here, Atlas, Geographus, or a complete system of geography, ancient and modern for Africa, volume 4, page 38. It reads, and just to give you a heads up, this is written in Old English. So many cases where you see here, the F here will be pronounced as an S. So just want to give you a heads up. All right. So it reads, the present Christians in Africa are partly strangers and partly natives, some of them slaves to the Turks and barbarians, and others free. Some of the Jews, and again, I want to make it clear, that's not what this, word of confusion. Some of the Jews who inhabited both sides of the Niger derived themselves from Abraham. Others fled hither from Aphia, or not Aphia, actually Asia, when Vespasian destroyed Jerusalem, or from Judea when 'twas wasted by the Romans, Persians, Saracens, and Christians. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain in 1462, from the Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and from England in 1422. These all differ in habit and are divided into several wealthy and numerous tribes, but have no dominion and are, it says here, are despised of all. Think about how we are being treated now. We are despised. We are despised as a people. But we see that, this is prevalent even back at this time. We were despised, as it says here. It says, these all differ in habit, and it says, and are divided into several wealthy and numerous tribes, but have no dominion, are despised of all nations, and so abominated by the Turks. Right? This is what you see in modern Palestine, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran. Actually, when we deal with the Israelis, dealing with the Khazarians. So, abominated by the Turks, that they are not admitted to be Mohammedans unless first baptized, and then made use of only to receive their customs and gathered in their taxes. All right, so let's hone in on a key quote here. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain in 1462, from the Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and from England in 1422. So are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Spain and Portugal? Are there any proof? Well, let's answer these questions. Let's start with this source here. Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey, Esquire, during the reigns of King William, Queen Anne or Annie, and King George I. This is coming from this is on page 25, and it reads, this is a screenshot of what you see in the back here. Daniel, Earl of Nottingham, State Secretary, or Secretary of State, on page 25. All right, this is what you see here. So again, this person is in a prominent position, Secretary of State, Daniel, Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State. So if we skip over or turn over to page 26, and this is the area that we are going to highlight, and this is the screenshot right here. He also he hath also the exterior air of, I think this is businesses. I can't really tell because of this word is cut off. And application enough to make him very capable, and his habit and manners very formal, a tall, thin, very black man. So this person, the Earl, the Secretary of State, is described as being a very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew about 50 years old. So this is giving us an anchor here. This is telling us during that time, the Spaniards or the Jews per se, they were dark or very dark people, very black people. So make a note of that. Make a note of that. So let's go to another source here. The Jews of Spain and Portugal and the Inquisition. This is going to confirm a few things here. And this is going to set up when we get to this at the certain point of this lesson, when we close out, about Amelia. You'll see when we get there. All right. So this circumstance induced King John to hasten their departure from Portugal, for which purpose ships were duly provided according to the agreement, but such was the temper of the captains and sailors that they subjected the Jews to the hardest possible conditions. They plundered them of their goods and valuables, even to their very clothes, and landed them naked and bare of everything on barren points of the African coast, leaving them to die of starvation or to be sold into slavery to the Moors. Nor was this all. The king wrested from their parents all children between the ages of 3 and 10 of those Jewish immigrants who, from poverty or otherwise, had omitted to pay the capitation tax on entering, or who were forced to remain in Portugal, and had them transported to the newly discovered island of St. Thomas or Sao Tome, which then swarmed with alligators and other beasts of prey to be brought up as Christians. So this is giving you a historical count, sources, written documents of Negroes. They refer to them as black Jews, right? In Portugal, they were enslaved. They were sent to certain parts of Africa, like the Portugal territories, West Africa. So this is giving you proof here, written proof of Negro Israelites being enslaved and being sent to other areas. And when it says island of St. Thomas or Sao Tome, this is not dealing with the Caribbeans. This is dealing with just below the Gold Coast in West Africa. That's Sao Tome, that island of St. Thomas. All right. So this is the map, 1754 map of Africa by Gabriel Ramirez. And this is Sao Tome right here. This is Sao Tome. So for those that don't know what, not familiar with this particular island, I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see this map in a close-up, right? And this is the path in which King Solomon's soldiers, and many believe King Solomon made this travel as well, because again, there was no canal here, so they pretty much had to travel all the way around just to get to the other side here. There was no way of passing through here. But notice what we see here. This is Sao Tome. This is the Gold Coast. We see the word Hebrews or Hebraeus. So this is telling us the route that Israelites would travel. We see Ophir. And this is biblical. All right. So let me give you a little more information on this map. So in 1754, Map of Africa by Gabriel Ramirez, and this 1754 map of Africa by Gabriel Ramirez, it covers the entire continent of Africa with adjacent parts to Europe and Arabia. The map identifies the biblical ports of Ophir, associated with the legends of King Solomon. Ophir was said to be a kingdom of limitless wealth from which Solomon collected the gold needed to construct the first temple of Jerusalem. The true location of Ophir is a matter of significant debate among biblical scholars and archaeologists. Africa, Ceylon, Malay, all being viable options. From the 16th century on, most, as per this map, believed Ophir to be located either in or around the African kingdom of Monopotapa, excuse me if I butchered the name. The gold-rich kingdom includes parts of modern-day Mozambique and Zimbabwe. This is where the Lembas reside at. The map also identifies Tarshish and Tartesso in southern Spain. And this is what we're dealing with up here. All right. Another kingdom from biblical legend from which Solomon was believed to have acquired ivory and other valuables, and also from which he initiated his mission to Ophir. So we could confirm this with 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 27. All right. Shout out to Brother Jerry up in upstate New York. I was stationed up in upstate New York. I was stationed at Griffiths Air Force Base. I know they shut it down out in Rome, New York. Very familiar with upstate New York. Shout outs to you. All right. Now I'll give some shout outs in a little bit to some of my other brothers and sisters that are in the chat. All right. So 1 Kings chapter 9, starting at verse 27. And Hiram sent in the navy of his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, which the servants of Solomon, and they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold, 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon. All right, so let's give another source here. Let's give another source. America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World by John Ogilvy. It reads, the Portuguese that dwelt on the island informed the Netherlanders that few lived above 50 years there. Yet notwithstanding, the great gain tempted them to tarry several of them, having 200 or 300 Negroes that worked in the sugar mills, that John III, King of Portugal, sent a colony thither above 200 years before, whom though the unwholesome air destroyed, yet the place was not left desolate. For he sent new inhabitants, who first settled in Guinea, next to Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, that so they might be the better used to the air. That the said king fold all those Jews, that said king sold, remember we're dealing with Old English, keep forgetting, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves that refused to embrace. Now, family, this further proves that it was our people that was being, when we're dealing with the Spanish Inquisition, that was being tortured, that was being brutalized, that was being enslaved. If the name still is, if they believe that it was them, why don't you see them making any reference to being enslaved by the Portuguese and then sent to different parts of Africa? So this is documented proof that our ancestors were enslaved, that there was Israelites that was being enslaved and sent to different parts of Africa. So it says that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves that refused to embrace the Roman religion, Christianity, and caused their children to be baptized, from whom coming thither in great numbers. Most of the present inhabitants were descended. So it's saying, especially when we deal with Sao Tome and some of the other properties of Portuguese in Africa, this is making it clear that the descendants that we see of today, and many that was of us on those slave ships, are descendants of Israel. This is why we see this inside our DNA. Here's another source: the Critical Review or Annals of Literature, Volume 57, by a Society of Gentlemen. This is on page 141. And you see it highlighted here, this further confirming what we read in the previous sources. It reads, King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, which had been discovered in 1471, and to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, let me say that again. And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews of Luango, who are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended. By these colonists, St. Thomas soon became a considerable place of trade and valuable for its sugar plantations. 30 years after their settlements, not less than 150,000 arobes, in other words, 30 pounds weight each of sugar, were exported, and the engines of 60 sugar works turned by slaves. These Negroes were purchased. Let me say that again. These Negroes, these Portuguese Israelites, these Negroes were purchased in Guinea, Congo, Mani-Congo, and the colonists had plantations furnished with from 150 to 3,000 Negro slaves. So who are these Hebrews and Spanish-speaking Ladino writing Negroes? Who are these people? And you'll see these writings, you'll see Ladino, which is a Spanish form of, actually is Solitreo, which is a Spanish form of Hebrew, on the pews in Savannah, Georgia, a church that was founded in 1771. So who are these Hebrews and Spanish-speaking Ladino writing Negroes? Who are they? And I'm not sure if my cousin Benea just thought about it. If you're in the building, drop a comment inside the comment section and I will bring you in. All right. I will bring you into the chat. So who are these Hebrews and Spanish-speaking Ladino writing Negroes? So again, want to focus on this quote from Atlas Geographus. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain 1462, from the Low Country 1350, from France 1403, and from England in 1422. Now, this is history that the name stealers want to hijack and try to tie this into how they have been kicked out of different communities. Now, this right here is dealing with our people. Our people. Are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Italy, France, and England? The depiction of Israelites in Amsterdam. Let's highlight this. Let me show you a source here. This is a book, Shakespeare and the Jews, by James Shapiro, 1996. Let's see what he says about the appearance of the Israelites during that time. So it says the accumulated experience of over 100 years of travel, trade, and conquest had convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the belief that Jews were black, needed to be qualified. When William Breton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635, he noted that the Jewish men are most black. Let me say that again. He noted that the Jewish men are most black and insatiably given unto women, drawing here on contemporary prejudices linking blackness and licentiousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1690, now we're dealing with 55 years later, he also paid a visit to the synagogue. He went to the same synagogue. There he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black men and distinct in their reasoning as gypsies. It goes on to say a vulgar error that all, and this is referring to this person. Let me go back here. I don't want to skip this because it ties into this. By the end of the 17th century, and this is where you start seeing racism, racial overtones. This is where you really get into the whitewashing of our people. By the end of the 17th century, works like the English translation of Francois Maximilian, excuse me if I butcher the name, missions A New Voyage to Italy, and highlight Italy, make clear that it is a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. This mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jews. See, they're saying, this person is saying that you cannot say that all the Israelites are dark melanated people, but it says it is only true of the Portuguese Jews, that only the Portuguese Jews are dark melanated people, are black people. I don't like to use the term black, but for the sake of the source that I'm using, I'm going to use it to make sure that we get proper context. All right. So this mission observed is only true of the Portuguese Jews, who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern regions. But the Jews who are originally of Germany, see, now we're dealing with Germany now, the Ashkenazis, right? The Khazarians. It says Jews who are originally of Germany. In other words, their origins of it's that territory. Now we're dealing with converts. Those, for example, I have seen and prayed you are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. Even Manasseh ben Israel, in his plea for the readmission of the Jews into England, offered evidence that some of the Jews in distant lands differ racially in his humble address. All right. So I want to make sure we highlight this note here that we want to make a note of, bookmark this, right? Page 26, 266 rather. The Portuguese Jews who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern regions. So make a note of that. So let's deal with the etymology dictionary definition of swarthiness or swarthy, so there's no misunderstanding. It says here, dark colored, especially of skin. Let me say that again. Dark colored, especially of skin. So we see swart plus y, swarty or swarthy. We see this again in the adjective. It says dark colored, tawny, especially in reference to skin. Let's go to another source here to continue to confirm who's who, right? Confirm that these Israelites were Negroes during this time. This is coming from Antique Gems and Rings by C.W. King, 1818 through 1888, page 326. It reads, and this is dealing with Cleopatra. The same age was a little later, extremely fruitful in heads of Negroes and also negresses, right? So men, Negroes, women, negresses. That's what this is saying here. Extremely fruitful in heads of Negroes and also of negresses, the latter often in the character of Cleopatra, holding to her breast the apse. There is reason to believe that some of the latter are intended to commemorate the renowned black concubine of Clement VII. So you see this source, this old source, is referring to Cleopatra as being a negresses, as being a Negro, being black, being a dark melanated concubine of Clement VII. See, the issues that we're having now is things have been whitewashed. Key people, key individuals in certain marks of time, or places of time. You have these name stealers as well as name stealers in Christianity, Catholic Church. They have gone back and they've been whitewashing everything that has history that looks like you and I. So let's go to the play Antony and Cleopatra by Shakespeare, just to kind of confirm that word tawny here. Let me just skip one down here. All right. This is coming from Antony and Cleopatra. Have glowed like plated Mars, now bend, now turn. The office and devotion of their view. Upon a tawny front, his captain's heart, which in the scuffles of great fights, hath burst, the buckles on his breast, reneges all temper. But we see the word tawny here. And when we go to the source, Antony and Cleopatra by Tawny, when it goes into the notes of this play. So when we go to the explanation here, look at what it says in the explanatory notes, right? 6. Tawny, front, dark countenance. Cleopatra was a Greek, but she is usually represented as darker skinned. Let me say that again. Dark countenance, tawny. Cleopatra was a Greek, but she is usually represented represented as darker skinned. So let's confirm this source with another actual source. This is Travels in Holland, the United Provinces, England, Scotland, and Ireland. Right? We're using old sources here. Old sources, family. All right, let's go back here. Let's see what it says here. This is going to confirm what I read in the previous source, not the source I just read from about Cleopatra, but going back to the Negroes, the Negro Israelites in Amsterdam. It says here, they're men most black, full of hair, and insatiably given unto women, their wives restrained, and made prisoners, their widows distinguished from all other women, Jews by white veils hanging to their backs. They will not bury among the Gentiles. So it's showing that these Negroes were honoring laws, statutes, and commandments. They separated themselves from the communities around them. It says they will not bury amongst the Gentiles, but have purchased unto themselves a peculiar burial place, a field on. Oh, I didn't put it all here, but you guys get it. So there's another group whose original complexion is described as swarthy. Right? Let me say that again. There's another group. There's another group's. I don't know why I got to correct this here. There's another group whose original complexion is described as swarthy. Let's go to the Journal of the Royal Institution of Cornwall, Footprints of Vanishing Race in Cornwall. And when we go here, look at what it says here. I believe that the first human beings who entered Cornwall in the Neolithic period belonged to a race of dwarfs or pygmies and were variable little people. The study of dwarfed races is a new branch of anthropology, and it has wonderfully developed during the last 20 years. Ancient classical authors mention pygmies living in remote parts of Asia and Africa, and the conflicts of the latter with the cranes are described in amusing language. These stories were for long thought to be childish inventions, but recent discoveries have proved that they were perfectly correct. When the Dutch occupied South Africa, they met with them dwarf bushmen, who are the smallest pygmies in the world. The Spaniards also had become acquainted with the Adas and Memunas, dwarf races of the Philippine islands, and Europeans before long discovered the dwarfs and the Andama Islands, who are known as many copies. In Africa, new dwarf tribes are constantly being found, such as the Sokos. So this is, again, family, this is confirming that even when we're dealing with Spain, not Spain, but I can't think of the words now. Scotland and some of those areas, the original people were Negroes. The original people were not the original people. And that's what this is doing. This is giving clarity on. And as you see here, it says, long ago, Jacob Grimm concluded from the traditions of elves, gnomes, trolls, currently in Germany, that dwarf races inhabited Central Europe in prehistoric times. So when you see these words, elves, gnomes, and trolls, guess what? These stem from the original people that was there. That's the labels that they gave them, like the word leprechaun, little people. And as you see here, we have our legends of Pisky, fairies, and little people, as these stories are now understood in Europe to refer to a real race of prehistoric dwarfs. All right. It goes on to say here, as to the fairies, they had a similar origin. They were not the dethroned gods of the heathen Celts, nor were they the spirit of unbaptized children or of Druids who had rejected Christianity, but they were originally dwarfs and pygmies similar to the Piskies. All right. So again, key quote here, our Piskies and fairies were genuine Cornish dwarfs belonging to a real race. And then we go back over here, just further proving here that there was an invasion. Notice what it says here. That able Celtic scholar, Professor Rees, has lately in a valuable work set forth the view that a dwarf race inhabited Britain previous to the Celtic invasion, and these views have made with general acceptance. This also will explain the tradition existing among the French peasantry that the fairies were mortal, and the stories that long ago they were actually killed in Wales. So this is dealing with a genocide. You know, especially when you start dealing with St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day really is dealing with this here, how the Catholic Church committed genocide on what was called the Twas, which was a dark melanated group of people from Africa. All right. So it says here, that's why this is saying here, when we're dealing with Ireland, because that, you know, St. Patrick's St. Patrick's did not, cast out snakes, kill snakes. Actually, they committed genocide. And St. Patrick's is just the face of the Catholic Church as they committed genocide in this territory. So it says the stories long ago, they were actually killed in Wales, Cornwall, then was in the early days of the Neolithic age, inhabited by a race of pygmies like the Bushmen of South Africa. All right. And this is just giving you some further proof here. The diminutive flint arrowheads found all over Western Europe furnish another proof of the existence of these pygmies. And that's what it goes on to say. They have been found in a kitchen midden in Hastings. They abound in Ireland. All right. And this is further proof that the original Irish people, the original, not what we see today, the original, we're going to prove that they were dark melanated people. This is the description of them. Celtic or Celtic myth and legend, page 20. In physique, it was short, swarthy. There you see it right there. Dark-haired, dark-eyed, and long-skulled. Its language belonged to the class of Hamitic, the surviving types of which are found among the Gallas, Abyssinians, Berbers, and other North African tribes. And it seems to have come originally from some part either of Eastern, Northern, or Central Africa. Spreading thence, it was probably the first people to inhabit the valley of the Nile. All right, so the depiction of Israelites in England, let's deal with England. So we're dealing with different territories like Amsterdam, but let's deal with England. Let's deal with England. Let's see what it says about England. A like mission, right? Just going back to the source, Shakespeare and the Jews, page 266. A like mission, though Manassas assumes that the Portuguese Jews are white, raising predictable questions of what constitutes blackness. The Merchant of Venice provides another instance of this identification of Jews with blackness in naming Shylock's countrymen, Tubal and Chus, the latter biblical name, immediately recognizable to Elizabethan audiences as progenitor of all Black Africans. So this person tried to respond to try to insinuate that let's go back here, right? Trying to this right here, the source here, saying another instance of this identification of Jews with blackness, right? It says here Tubal and Chus is going back here, the latter biblical names, trying to say here immediately recognizable to Elizabethan audiences as progenitor of all Black Africans. The most rigorous English challenge to the position that Jewish nations was biologically distinct appears in Thomas Brown's consideration of whether Jews stink naturally. Listen to some of this craziness, right? In his pseudodoxia, right? If they and again, if they intermarried, and I'm just giving you some summaries here. If they intermarried and mixed with other people, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews be realized? So this is a question that was asked inside the source that I read. Let's go here, because this is the question that they asked and saying, hey, it doesn't make sense. If Paul, it says here, if they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? Because you know how Christianity is taught today is that the Jews look like everybody. Matter of fact, that's what they teach in Judaism, saying that they are this they're everybody. They are what they call it, multiracial, cultural, saying that they have a diversity of ethnic people. This is what they're calling out right here. They're saying that makes absolutely no sense. That is breaking Paul's predictions that is in Romans. So if you're saying that all of a sudden the Israelites just blended in and began to be like everyone, got absorbed by other nations completely, then that basically contradicts Paul's words. That's what they're saying here. All right. So although the Jews were a race, they were an exceptional one insofar as they reputedly could never commingle with others. After all, if they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized. Some writers pointed that the Jews, dark or black, skinned as a marker of their racial differences. So this is making it clear. Many of them back at that time made it clear that the Israelites were dark melanated people, right? They were dark skinned. In addition, as members of a religious community from which the founders of the church had emerged, Jews were at once the opposite of Christians and at the same time potential Christians. From a Christian perspective, the only thing that stood in the way of their conversion. So this is making it clear that during that time, they recognized the Israelites as being Negroes, dark melanated people, being us. So how did others during Shakespeare's time describe the Israelites? So let's see how some of the others during that time described the Israelites, how their appearance. This is Paul Isaiah 1655. This is a quote from him. I knew you to be a Jew, for you Jews have a peculiar color of face different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration. For you are black and uncomely, right? That's the key. They said black and uncomely. That word uncomely, think about it. And not white as other men. So making it clear that they dark melanated people, but he's insulting them too. The King James Version is held as a landmark composition. And this is coming from the Global Consequences of Mistranslations. It says the King James Version is held as a landmark composition in the English language and was extraordinarily influential. Its effect on the language can be observed in a multitude of other texts. For example, the English translation of Songs, in other words, Songs of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5, resurfaces in an obvious related but upside down form in the English. Translation by Paul Isaiah and Sebastian Munster work the Messiah of the Christians and the Jews of 1655. And notice what it says here. And a disputation of a Christian with an abstinent Jew. The Christian says, for you Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men. For you are black and uncomely and not white as other men. So Paul Isaiah actual translations of Sebastian Munster Messiah's Christianorum et Judaeorum, excuse me if I butcher this here, but this is the argument here that is recorded. And this is what they're quoting from. This is actually from this source here, right? The Messiah of the Christians and the Jews. It says here, and God save you. This is supposed to be the words of a Jew. And God save you. How you know me to be a Jew, that you speak in, it says that you speak so in Hebrew. With me art thou a Jew in of you. Yeah, I'm butchering here because it's old English. Me art thou a Jew and one of our people. So the Christian responds, I am not a Jew, neither of thy people, neither am I acquainted with you. But from the form of your face, I knew you to be a Jew. For you Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration, for you are black and uncomely and not white. Okay. And it goes on to say, for you are black and uncomely and not white as other men. Okay. So this is giving us proof that the Israelites during that time, they were described as being dark melanated people. But let's go back to Shakespeare and the Jews. It says contemporary scholars have traced the origins of modern racism and nationalism back to the 16th century, a time when European nations were coming into contact on an unprecedented scale with other peoples. Indeed, they are quick to point out the words themselves. Race as well as nation only began to acquire. So this is giving us an idea where the racism started being inserted and who was the perpetrators of inserting whitewashing of key ancient figures. But it goes on to say much of this research is flawed. However, by its secular bias, it has been remarkably slow to acknowledge the extent to which theology shaped the way people thought about both racial and national differences in early modern times. As a result, this scholarship has necessarily ignored. So this is telling us it was religion that began to insert the whitewashing, began to really get into this whitewashing of our identity. Place of the Jew in the formation of early modern Europe, ideas about race and nations, despite the fact that so much theorizing is about these topics in the 16th and 17th centuries, was produced in response to theoretical problems posed by the Jews. All right. So again, it says for Shakespeare's contemporaries, Jews were not identified by their religion alone, but by national and racial affiliation as well. Okay. So Great Britain had a plan to manipulate Negro Israelites to adopt their doctrine. This is coming from the Repeal of the Jews Naturalization Bill, 1753, page 106. All right. It says here, as to the first of these two rules, I'm sure it stands in need of no illustration, but as to the second, I shall suppose that for strengthening our sugar colonies and for peopling them with subjects instead of slaves, a scheme were proposed for naturalizing all the blacks born in any of them without any other condition whatsoever. I will say that our problem adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous because their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. But if the conditions were added that no such blacks should be naturalized unless they declared themselves Christians, see, this is also part of the plan where you start looking at some of these communities like England made it a point that they were literally deporting Negroes in order to keep England white. So this is further proving this, right? So I will say that our adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous because their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. But if the conditions were added that no such blacks should be naturalized unless they declared themselves Christians, and that no such black man should be nationalized unless he married a white woman, nor any black woman unless she married a white man. So these are laws that they put in place to make an attempt to whitewash our community. To whitewash our community. We see this still happening today. Think about the commercials that you see. How many times you see commercials? How many commercials have you seen with them whitewashing our community? A Negro with a Caucasian woman or a sister with a Caucasian man. They've been doing showing a lot of commercials with our community mixing and meshing with other nations. Have you guys noticed that? Well, this is the plan that, as you see, that was put together with the goal of trying to whitewash our ancestors at this time. Naturalization bill. Unless he married a white woman, nor any black woman unless she married a white man, the ridicule of the scheme would be very much softened because their progeny would in time unite and coalesce with the rest of the people. It might a little alter the complexion of the people of these islands. So they were trying to whitewash our community, whitewash our people by mixing and meshing. But they would all, as you see here, it says, but they would all become the same people and would look upon themselves in no other light than as subjects of Great Britain. So they wanted to get our brothers and sisters to start marrying other groups, so that way they can completely embrace the culture of Great Britain and completely wipe away, forget about their own culture, as we see in Nehemiah chapter 13, when Nehemiah had to call out the priests, call out the leaders of Israel, because the men started mixing and meshing, marrying women of foreign nations, to the point that their children did not know their own native tongue. They only spoke the language of those foreign women. And so you see marriages were being annulled because of this. And this is confirming this here. So it says, and would look upon themselves in no other light than as subjects of Britain. This must show the imprudence, even the ridiculousness of our adopting the doctrine that all Jews born here are to be deemed natural born subjects for the latest posterity, while they continue, Jews will, and I didn't put it all here, but anyway, so this is a key quote here. The same people would look upon themselves in no other light than as subjects of Great Britain. And this is why the scriptures warned Judah about mixing with other nations, mixing with the Canaanites, and as far as those 7 territories, because they ran a risk of mixing and meshing our culture. That's what happened to King Solomon. He was mixing and meshing, marrying foreign women. So are there any additional documents that further proves how white Jews treated the original Israelites? Well, we could go to a memoir here, the memoir of the Jewish founder of the state of Georgia. That's right, Georgia, down south in this country. His name is James Oglethorpe. Oglethorpe divided the men and boys into parties, one to cut forks, poles, and lathes for making, or laths for making more bowers, another to set them up, a third to fetch palmetto leaves, and a fourth to thatch. And a Jew workman bred in the Brazils, who had come from Savannah, taught them to perform all this nimbly and neatly. So we see a Negro here, a Negro Israelite who was bred in Brazil, in Savannah, Georgia, providing training. So moving forward, is this an accurate depiction of Shakespeare? Is this an accurate depiction of Shakespeare? We're going to answer this question. Is this an accurate depiction of Shakespeare? And I'm going to prove to you that it's not. Let's see how Shakespeare described himself. And then we're going to get to a key point about the Black lady. How does Shakespeare describe himself? This is coming from the autobiography of Shakespeare, a fragmented by Alexander Lewis Charles, 1839, or Lewis Charles Alexander, right? 1839, 1913. All right, let's see what it says here. Let's start here. All right, let me go back here. Let's start here. Shakespeare describes his father and grandfather appearance. Let's see what it says. This is coming from page 19 and 20. All right, let's see what it says about the Shakespeare's father description. I remember my father, Richard Shakespeare of Warwick. He was a small, dark man. So Shakespeare is describing his father as being a small, in other words, short, dark man, and had a large head and very little hands, and feet being as to that, like my grandfather, Thomas of Utrecht, as I was often told. So he says that his father is a dark man, a small, dark man, and said that here, being as to that, like my grandfather, Thomas of Utrecht, as I was often told. So Shakespeare describes his father as being dark, but now let's see what he as we see here, says that his father looked like his grandfather. As you see here, being as to that, like my grandfather. So he's describing his father looking like his grandfather, short, dark, large head, little hands, and feet being as to that, as you see, as his grandfather. But now we see Shakespeare also describes his brother. Let's see what he says about his brother. Shakespeare describes his brother in the source as well. Let's see what he says. He loved us, my younger brother John and me. He often seemed as if we were not living or loving him, though at times he would play with us and tell us stories and sing to us and buy us sweetmeats and toys. I was but a very little boy, but I mind me well of him and of his fantastic way of curling his mustachios and beard, which were dark and shiny, as were his fine large eyes, very unlike the hue and complexion of the Shakespeares of Warwick. Mustachios and beard, again, it says, it goes on to say, yeah, this is where it left at. Very unlike the hue and complexion of the Shakespeares of Warwick and Stratford on Avon and of other parts. Look at what he goes on to say. Whom I did and after years meet, which were light and somewhat inclined to Auburn of red or red. So Shakespeare's describing his brother to be brown, but lighter than the rest of his family that's in this territory of Stratford on Avon. So he's saying that very unlike, far as his brother, it says very unlike the hue and complexion of the Shakespeares of Warwick and Stratford on Avon and of the parts which whom I did after years meet, which were light and somewhat inclined to Auburn or red. My father had a very fine voice and could sing. But let me give you a clarity here. Auburn, this is the tone of Auburn. This is the tone of Auburn. So he said his brother was this color, saying that he was lighter than the rest of the Shakespeares in this territory of Warwick. So look at the color, the shade of Auburn. It could be here all the way down to here. But he's saying that his brother was lighter than most of the family. Auburn is similar to the color of ruddy. It's basically synonymous to ruddy. So Auburn dictionary definition. Let's see the definition of Auburn from etymology definition. It says whitish, yellows, white, flax colored, off-white, whitish. But guess what this says here? Look at this. The meaning shifted in 16th century to reddish brown under the influence of Middle English brun. In other words, brown. So we say reddish brown, we're dealing with brown. We're not dealing with non-melanated people. That's why I want to make sure you see here, brown, right? Auburn is synonymous to brown, not Caucasian. Shakespeare said his brother's skin complexion was lighter than his. Shakespeare describes his brother's skin complexion as auburn, which would be synonymous to biblical ruddy. What is the definition of ruddy? You guys already know this, and let's prove this. This is coming from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia of 1915. Ruddy is the form taken by the adjective red when used as a term of praise of the human skin, and this is its use in the Bible. The Hebrew and Greek word are all usual words for red or to be red. But here's the kicker. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. Let me read that part again. This is how it's applied biblically. That's what this is saying. It says when used as a term of praise of the human skin, and this is used in the Bible. So it's telling you where you see the word ruddy, this is praise of human skin. This is how it's used in the Bible, in the scriptures. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. All right. So David is described as comely and dark. Let's break this down. This is tying into ruddy. This is tying into auburn. Look at here. It says, and he sent and brought him in Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance and godly, goodly to look to. And Yahweh said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. So we see in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12, he's described as ruddy. But let's look at some of the other translations so that way we can get an idea of what it looks like. Because oftentimes, many of our brothers and sisters, when we see the word ruddy, will automatically default to like Malcolm X, skin complexion. That's not what ruddy, that's not what Auburn is, as I gave you the color palette for Auburn. But let's look at another translation. Let's see how they transliterated ruddy. Let's see what they say. This is coming from the ISV, the International Standard Bible. It says here, so he sent and brought him. He had a dark, healthy complexion. So look at this, family. So in the ISV translation, David is described as dark and healthy, having healthy complexion with beautiful eyes. And he was handsome. The NHEB Bible, look at what it says. And he was reddish brown and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. Let's look at the NLT. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. Still all of them still summing up, making it clear that David was a dark-skinned man. Shakespeare. Let's see how Shakespeare describes his appearance and ethnicity. Let's see what it says here. Let's see how Shakespeare in his own autobiography describes himself. It says, in Will Shakespeare, that was I, a small, dark man with great eyes, whom the women loved not a little, but who loved them not too much, and who was not seldom called the little Jew boy, saying that Shakespeare is making it clear that he was a dark-skinned man, just like his father, just like his grandfather, but he was also referred to as the little Jew boy or the little Jew from Midland counties, which made me to fume with anger. For I knew not then, as I did afterwards, that my grandfather Thomas, the Little of Utrecht in Holland, had been born a Jew. So Shakespeare is making it clear that his grandfather was a Jew. So if his grandfather was a Jew, this means that his father was a Jew. This means that Shakespeare was a Jew. He made it clear that his father was dark, short, with small hands, small feet, and a big head. He said the same thing about his grandfather, saying that his father looks like his grandfather, and that his grandfather was an Israelite. That's what he says here. Grandfather Thomas, the little of Utrecht in Holland, had been born a Jew. So Shakespeare inherited the bloodline of King David, because look at the gifts that Shakespeare had. Shakespeare inherited the poetic gift of writing like King David. King David, according to scriptures, is known as the sweetest musician, the sweetest songwriter, sweetest psalmist. So this is in our blood, family. Look up the word gospel under the Oxford Dictionary. You'll see a special entry for our people. And we could confirm this with 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 1. Look at what it says about David. It says here, now these be the last words of David. David, the son of Jesse, said, the man who was raised up on high, the anointed of the Elohim of Jacob, and the sweetest psalmist of Israel. All right. So when we look at psalmist, we already see here, it says what? Song, hymn, psalms. All right. So who is the dark-skinned lady? We went through all of this, proving that during Shakespeare's times, the Israelites were viewed as being dark-skinned people. Shakespeare described himself as being a dark-skinned Israelite. But let's deal with this lady right here. Let's deal with this dark lady right here. Amelia Bassano, also known as Amelia Lanier, was a pioneering English poet and one of the first women in England to publish a book of poetry under her own name. Born in 1569 to a family of Venetian Jews, so we see that she was an Israelite. It says born in 1569 to a family of Venetian Jewish origins, she was part of the Bassano family, a notable group of musicians and instrument makers in Elizabethan, England. Her family worked as court musicians, which may have given her exposure to the culture and intellectual circles of the time. So let's confirm this with the source here, because you see that Shakespeare's whitewashed, right? Let's look here. Shakespeare's whitewashed, and this is supposedly be Amelia. Look how they whitewashed her. I'm going to prove to you that they whitewashed her using this source here. Let's start with page 46 and 47. Let's see what it says here. This gives you some information about her as she was a mistress at the age of 13. All right, to what they refer to, the person was of royalty. His name was Lord Hudson. But let's see what it says. Let's see what it says here. Let me just go ahead and get into it. The rather important man is important. This is dealing with Lord Hudson, is important to us because somewhere around 1582, he appears to have made what seems to be to us today a rather unsavory deal with the court recorder consort. The Bassanos, who as court musicians were under his control, he would extend them his protection at court, and they would supply him with a mistress, a young Italian mistress. So you see this contract they entered with the family for protection and hooking them up with a deal. You know, they were musicians, but look at what that deal is. He wanted, in exchange for his protection, they wanted the young Italian mistress. Now, why is this important? Let's skip down here. Such women were known for their knowledge of literature, their wit, their skill at music, as well as in the bedchamber. This is, you know, it's going to get a little weird here, family, just for a little bit when I read some of this. The role required knowledge of several languages, the classical and fashion, as well as a sexual imagination strong enough for the engaged reenactment of famous mythological rape scenes such as Leda and the Swan. The best practitioners could sleep with kings and make a fortune while writing volumes of poetry in their spare time and effectively enjoy the single life. Thus, it was that around that time, at the age of 56, so Lord Hudson, this agreement that her family, that he entered in with her parents, was for their 13-year-old daughter. As you see here, Hudson acquired a dark-skinned 13-year-old mistress, Amelia Bassano. So we see that on the cover, Amelia Bassano is depicted as being a Caucasian woman, but we see that she was dark-skinned here. Dark-skinned, and this 56-year-old man entered into an agreement with her parents to give them protection and hook them up, and they, in exchange, gave him their daughter to be a mistress to him. 13 years old. Come on, family. Come on, family. This is not the first time we've heard our young women being used like that. It's not the first time being exploited like that. This is sad. This is sad. So Bassano's heritage, Amelia Bassano's heritage and appearance often described as dark or swarthy, distinguished her within Elizabethan society and possibly influenced her connection to the mysterious dark lady in Shakespeare's sonnets. This part of her history highlights the complex intersections of race, gender, and power dynamics in Renaissance England, especially for women of color who moved in elite circles. So let's go back here. Let's confirm this with this source here. Let's see what it says. Let's confirm what I just read. Clearly, the Bassanos were perceived as black, most likely because of their Moorish ancestry. Wait a minute. So it's saying that she was a Moor, but it didn't stop here. And the relative darkness of their skin. If they had been suspected of being Jews, this would, of course, have only accentuated the perception that they were dark, as Tudor Parfaitt has shown in his recent book. Now they keep making reference to Tudor Parfaitt in his recent book, Black Jews in Africa and the Americas. Renaissance Christians viewed Jews as dark and akin to Moors. Further, some Jews themselves adopted the same viewpoint. Isaac ben Judah, look at it, listen to this craziness. Isaac ben Judah Abranel, even explained their swarthiness as part of a divine punishment. Now they dealing with skin complexion, dark skin complexion being the curse of Ham. While others claim the lack of ruddiness in their faces was the result due to Jewish law of a lack of red menstrual blood at the moment of conception. Now, while Amelia was clearly a Bassano, a foreigner, the Willoughbys were the cadet branch of Tudors, and Lord Hudson was the, albeit illegitimate, son of Henry the Eighth, one of the most powerful members of the Tudor dynasty. So in one sense, and I didn't put it all here, sorry about that, family. So we see again that she was dark-skinned. She was a Moor. She was swarthy. She was not just a Moor, but again, let's prove that she was an Israelite. Further prove that she was an Israelite. So Amelia Bassano was of Jewish descent. Her family, the Bassanos, came from Venice, where they were likely part of the Jewish community, although Jews in Venice often faced restrictions and sometimes outwardly converted to Christianity due to social pressures. The Bassanos moved to England in the early 1500s to serve as musicians in the court of Henry the Eighth. Officially, the family practiced Christianity once in England, which may have been necessary to secure their place at court and avoid discrimination in a country that did not permit open Jewish practice at that time. Although Amelia herself was baptized as a Christian, many scholars believe she retained aspects of her Jewish heritage. Some interpret her poetry as reflecting things and values that resonate with Jewish traditions, suggesting that she may have maintained a cultural connection to her Jewish roots even within her Christian environment. So let's go back to the source here, Shakespeare Dark Lady. Let's see what it says about her ethnicity. Other people, to her annoyance, criticized her spelling. So it was that in late 16th century London, to have any involvement in playwriting, one would have had to be a countess or a duchess, a small, dark-skinned Jewish girl from a family of Italian court musicians would have seemed to have no chance at all in this. So we see that she was a Moor. She was swarthy. In other words, she was dark-skinned. And she, as you see here, was an Israelite. We proved that Shakespeare was an Israelite. Now we see that this dark lady that Shakespeare, from Shakespeare's play, right, is making reference to Amelia Bassano. She was, as you see here, a small, dark-skinned Jewish girl from a family of Italian court musicians would have seemed to have no chance at all in this, right? But then it goes on down here in this paragraph. It says the story begins in Italy in the early 1500s in a small town called Bassano del Grappa, but about 40 miles north of Venice. In some ways, Bassano was a small medieval town like many in the region. Look what this says here. This is key. It says here, it was the home of a famous dynasty of painters that included Jacopo di Ponte, excuse me if I butcher these names, better known as Jacopo Bassano. It was also the hometown of a remarkable dynasty of Jewish musicians who were then known as Pivas. So we see this reference to her being a Negro Israelite. Let me go back here. Just for those of you guys may have missed it. She was also referred to as she was Moor. She was a Moor. Right? As we see here, clearly the Bassanos were perceived as black, most likely because of their Moorish ancestry. And what's interesting, this is what I think, did I put it here? No, it's not here, but it's on this page here of how for England, how they were clearing out England, sending our people out, kicking us out of England to keep England white. And that's what this is referring to right here. Shortly after Amelia became Lord Hudson's mistress in 1584, Arthur Bassano and others were disrespectful to officers of the former sheriff of London. One of them, a little black man who was booted, answered in a very despiteful manner, together with another of them being a tall black man who said, we have as good friends in the court as thou hast, and better too. Send us to the ward. Let me see here. It's not here. But notice here, though, a little black man, a tall black man, and we're dealing with who? The Moors. All right. But further up, it's not on this page. Well, it's on this page, but I didn't catch the screen print. But this actually gives clarity on what I pointed out. It says here, indeed, within a few years, black Moors were being deported in order to keep England white. All right. So, family, I know we took a long journey on this, but one thing we proved is that Amelia, she was known to have written some of Shakespeare's works. When you do the study on her, just some of the notes that I have here, let me just touch a little bit on my notes just so that way you guys can understand. So when you think about Shakespeare, as far as the correlation to Amelia, so the Dark Lady was a prominent figure in William Shakespeare's sonnets, specifically appearing in sonnets 127 and 154, where she is depicted as mysterious, dark-skinned, and possessing an intense, complicated relationship with the poet. Shakespeare sonnet points, and let me do something real quick, family. All right. Let me read this here. Some of my notes here. It goes on to say here, Shakespeare's sonnets paint the dark lady as alluring but morally ambiguous, casting her as a lover who inspires both passion and torment. In these poems, the poet reveals a love-hate dynamic, describing her in ways that suggest she is both enchanting and at times treacherous, challenging the poet's fidelity and stirring of jealousy and insecurity. So when we look at the correlations to Amelia Bassano, when you look at the description of the dark lady, right, the physical description, the dark lady is described as having dark features, which aligns with historical description of Amelia Bassano as swarthy or black, likely due to, again, as we pointed to her being connected to the Moors. And she was also, as you see, she was a Hebrew. This physically set the dark lady apart from the traditionally fair-skinned English women ideal of beauty, adding to her mystique in the sonnets. Then also we see like the social circles that's highlighted in Shakespeare's play. So Bassano and Shakespeare moved within overlapping artistic and intellectual circles. So this is making it clear that they knew each other, and they had contact, they had communications. So Bassano and Shakespeare moved within overlapping artistic and intellectual circles in Elizabethan England. So making it plausible, right? Making it plausible that the Shakespeares may have known Bassano, or at the very least heard about her relationship with Henry Carey, who was also Shakespeare patron, further ties her to Shakespeare's world and heighten the likelihood that she could have served as inspiration. And then when we look at the backgrounds and themes, right? Bassano's Italian and Jewish heritage, along with her reputation as an educated and independent woman, might have influenced Shakespeare's portrayal of the dark lady as someone unconventional and intellectually intrigued. All right. And so, when you start looking at, even from the perspective of like the literary connection as far as the talents, we see that Bassano, she was very educated. And even we dealt with the thematic overlaps, we see how Bassano's poetry addresses themes of social justice, religious critiques, and gender inequality, which resonates with themes found in like the Merchants of Venice, right? That's a play, Othello, works of Shakespeare. And then also when you look at according to the literary style and voices, when you do this research, some researchers argue that certain passages in Shakespeare plays, particularly those exploring women's perspectives, show a voice that might align with a woman's experience. For instance, the heroines in Much Ado About Nothing and Measure for Measure display sharp wit and insight into constraints on women's lives. All right. But nevertheless, that's who we're dealing with here. This sister here, I just want to again take the time out to explain to you who this sister is. That she's an Israelite, very gifted, very talented. And you see some of the things that was going on back then for to get her inside certain positions and certain spaces. The family kind of, in a nutshell, sold her services out. Age of 13 allowed her to be a mistress to a 56-year-old man. But there you have it, family. Amelia Bassano, the Israelite, the Negro Israelite, who is believed to have written some of Shakespeare's works. And also the movie, or not the movie, the works of the Black Lady, contributed to her. You can point it at her. All right. I know this was a lot of information. Hope and pray that this helps you guys. I know we've been up late here. All right. I know this is an unscheduled live, but I'll try to get better, get back on track in the future. So with that being said, family, really appreciate you guys. And I'm just looking up here, looking at my screen here. Hope and pray that you guys got something out of this lesson. So I encourage you guys, hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and also on the way out, put a comment inside the comment section. And I forgot to put my banner back on. But look, in a nutshell, on your way out, go to the comment section of this video and just post your thoughts. That helps with breaking the suppression of YouTube, getting us out of this box. Because right now they've been doing a lot of suppressing of this, again, of the views, suppressing of the notifications, and unsubscribing subscribers. With that being said, family, not going to start talking, continue to talk you to death. Not going to sound like I'm starting to ramble. So we're going to go ahead and conclude right here. Really appreciate you guys. And the words of Yahweh that he had given to Moses. Right. Matter of fact, before I do that, let me check and make sure that there's no super chats. I want to make sure I give shout outs. All right. No, I don't see any super chats. All right. Just wanted to make sure before I got out of here. All right, family. In the words of Yahweh that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 to 14. Fear ye not, stand still. See the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, they will never have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you. But here's the kicker, family. We have to hold our peace. Can't go back. Can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.